Downloadable content in video games is a divisive subject in video gaming, with a lot of controversy about content being left out in video games in order to sell it on as added content either later on in the game's life cycle or on day one of the game's release itself, and also controversy about the price itself. And up until very recently, Nintendo as a game publisher has been very old-fashioned in their approach and ethics surrounding DLC, only embracing the concept in recent games such as Mario Kart 8, Hyrule Warriors, and last year's title Fire Emblem Awakening. Now, one might be wondering why I'm discussing downloadable content in a video about Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and how it is relevant at all. Well, today I'm going to be discussing why Game Freak and Nintendo should start embracing bringing DLC to Pokémon titles, why Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is the perfect game to begin this expansion, and why I believe we as customers should want this too. DLC is a very taboo topic in video games, and not everyone will agree with me, but DLC if done correctly can be a very beneficial thing that can expand the game's life cycle almost infinitely, as we've seen with various other game genres. This is an open discussion and I'm really interested in your thoughts on DLC in Pokemon and Nintendo games in general. I'll be discussing with you guys in the comments, and let's begin this little discussion. First, let's discuss Game Freak's point of view surrounding downloadable content in their games. In an interview with the website VG247 last year, the Game Freak director Junichi Masuda said when asked about the possibility of DLC in Pokemon games, and I quote, "In terms of DLC specifically, I don't know what shape DLC can take in the future, but at the moment I don't feel it's a safe enough mode, so to speak, appropriate for Pokemon, and I like the idea that Pokemon can be enjoyed with just one piece of software. You buy the game and it can be enjoyed with just that one software that you buy. That's a key point for Game Freak." And this is a really noble viewpoint to have, especially in today's market where game companies are notorious for asking for customers to buy items in-game on top of buying the game itself, also known as microtransactions. However, his viewpoint is also very old-fashioned. Speaking entirely for myself, however, I'm sure Pokemon fans can agree with me. We as customers and fans aren't asking for microtransactions to be part of the series that we all know and love. We're not asking for the option to purchase event Pokemon, or clothing packs, or heck, we're certainly not asking for the option to purchase items like rare candies off the Nintendo eShop. The game would certainly regress embracing microtransactions, as it would alienate a lot of customers, including myself. But Pokemon is an annual series, which means a new Pokemon game is released every single year, and this has been the norm dating back to 2009 with the release of Pokemon Platinum. This means that each game is supposed to tie you over for a year, until the next reiteration. However, the actual main story in Pokemon games can literally be completed within 48 hours, and if you're not into competitive battling, that can mean there's nothing to do until the next Pokemon game is released next year. So, how can Game Freak expand the life cycle of their game to keep customers retentive and wanting more? By releasing additional content in the form of DLC. Once again, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying Game Freak should embrace microtransactions. That would be a huge step backwards, but additional content packs in a way that Nintendo have already started to do with games like Mario Kart 8, bringing a lot of really worthwhile new content for a really reasonable price. That would be awesome. The possibilities are endless. Every couple of months, Game Freak could release a new small region for us to explore. There doesn't even need to be 8 gyms and an entire region's worth of content. Maybe just something like the Orange Islands, maybe with half or even a quarter of the content we're used to in a full release. For example, with 4 gyms and some fun mini-games that would keep us entertained and await for the next year's big release. If they were feeling truly ambitious, and Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is the perfect time for this, as it's a remake of the 3rd generation games, they could release Kanto reimagined for even half the price of the full games, in the form of DLC, with gym challenges and its own story and Elite 4, which would fit in perfectly with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, as Fire Red and Leaf Green were 3rd generation games too. This is entirely unrealistic, and maybe some of you guys really don't like that idea, but this is just hypothetical ideas that Game Freak could do if they weren't so old-fashioned in their approach. Ideas that would really help with the game's life cycle, and things that I personally believe would not alienate fans but instead encourage them to continue playing their products. Game Freak quite simply have to have some kind of downloadable patch in the works to make Pokemon X and Pokemon Y compatible with Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire with the new things it's introducing, such as Mega Evolutions. Otherwise, that just simply shows a lack of ambition and willingness to keep their games compatible, and they have shown that they can do downloadable content with patches to X and Y. We'll simply see in time. I'm interested in what you think. After what I've discussed today, do you think DLC is a good idea for Pokemon? Let me know in the comments. Just a friendly reminder, my limited edition Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire Hoenn Confirmed t-shirt is only on sale for the next 8 hours at the time of this video being released, and once it's off sale, you'll never be able to purchase it again, so if you do want to purchase it before it's too late. A link is in the description to the page where you can buy it. 500 likes would be really appreciated for hopefully another Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire related video tomorrow, and feel free to subscribe so you don't miss any more of my future Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire related videos. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed today's video. Hopefully it hasn't been too monotonous and boring, and I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.